Well, welcome everyone back to the Redeem Her Time podcast. This is a very timely conversation that we're about to have. Sandy Cooper and I have literally been emailing back and forth now, Sandy, for I don't know, 7, 8 months. And
Months.
it was just like something was always kind of putting it off to the next. And it was just
Yeah,
so interesting how this conversation has been perfectly timed by the Lord to be happening now because of what he's been laying on both of our hearts to
yeah.
talk with women about. And so I want to welcome you to the Redeem Her Time podcast. And I want to let you tell us a little bit about you and what all are you balancing in this season of your life. I know you're the host of the Balanced Mom podcast. So balance
Yeah.
is like where it's a
It's
juggle
kind of a thing.
balance, right?
That's right. That's right. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. And thank you so much for being persistent in making sure we got this on the calendar because, yes, I feel like it's been a long time coming. So I've been anticipating this for a really long time. It's just a pleasure to talk to you in person and, well, in person on Zoom,
Right.
as
In person, in real life.
in
Yeah.
person. That's right. But it's great. So who am I? And what am I juggling? Well, I am a mom to four kids. I have two adopted and two biological. They are 18, 23, 25, and my oldest one would be 27, but he passed away when he was 9 months old. I
Mm.
have been a wife to John for 31 years, which is weird because I'm 37. So, whatever. Um, I am the author of three books and a Substack newsletter called Behind the Balance. I am the host of the Balanced Momcast, which is a uh, weekly podcast for overwhelmed Christian moms. I've been doing that since 2019. I'm coming up on 6 years on that. And I am the co-host and co-founder of Writing Off Social, where we help female Christian writers grow and nurture their audience without social media. And I do that with my friend Mary Kay Tiller. So
You
that's
got a
what I'm
lot of
balancing.
hats and a lot of balls that you're juggling. I love that.
Yes, yes.
Okay, I want to ask this question because you are in the season where your kids are no longer little. I think you said your youngest is 18, so
18.
they can
Hmm.
pretty much get themselves dressed and, where they need to be and
Most days,
they
sure.
still need us, right?
That's
So
right.
I
I
want you
literally just
to
ironed my 23-year-old son's shirt like an hour ago because he has a job interview today. So I'm like, hold on, I will go do that. And I'm like, do
that's
you
a
know how
mom
to
thing.
iron? He said, no, I don't. And I'm like, I got it. So yeah,
Add it to the
still
list.
helping them get dressed.
Yes, yes, yes. So I want to ask a question, and I'm curious because you do talk to a lot of younger moms who have
Yeah.
kids at home, and there may be some people. Most of my listenership is like 40 and over, so our kids are not the itty bitties that
Yeah, yeah.
we're literally kind of walking from point A to point B, but they've got independence and stuff. And it feels like when they're little, life is busy.
Yeah.
And we always are like saying when they grow up, when they go to school, when they get their driver's license, when they go off to college, when I'll have more time. So I
Yeah.
would love to just kind of say, just on a personal note, like, has that really happened? As your kids have gotten to those when they stages, did you suddenly have
Yeah.
more time and find yourself less busy and so much easier to balance?
You know, I
I know I'm setting
it's
you up,
oh
but
yeah, no, that's okay. I actually love that question because I think the busyness just shifted from always tending to other people's needs, like constantly, that like hands-on, you can't take your eyes off. You need to be wiping their bottoms and getting their snacks and pouring their water and like all of that, like constant, 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 which just felt always like that tension to as I started to release some of the responsibility of their lives to them, as we do as moms. I just started doing more of the things that I felt like God was calling me to do, which was all the stuff I just listed. You just start to shift it out, and so and also, I also spent, like I said, I just ironed my son's shirt and I just got off the phone with my daughter who is dealing with like a major issue with her grad school program and needed to talk for like an hour. And so like I'm still parenting, but it's just really different. I can still set the notifications on my phone to silent now, where I wouldn't have been able to do that for hours at a time when I had, little ones at home. So it's just different.
yeah,
It's just
yeah.
different.
It's
Yeah.
a good different, right?
Yeah, it is.
It's
Yeah.
it's so interesting because I think we think it's because of the season of life I'm in that I feel busy and I feel out of
Right.
balance. And I
Right.
think it's this lie that, I mean, maybe we tell ourselves, maybe the culture tells us, maybe we want to believe that like the problem is really out here and it's all the
Yes.
stuff in here. And we're not
Yes.
really addressing the fact that, guess what? I get to that next season, it doesn't get better.
That's right.
Really about me. It's really
It's
about
really
like what's
about
going on in
me.
my
Yeah.
heart. Yeah. And that's what we talk about here. Busyness is not a disordered calendar. That
Mhm.
does help, but it's really a disordered heart. Our heart is chasing after a lot of things. And are
That's
they
right.
the things that we're called to? So tell us a little bit
Yeah.
more about the business side of you. You mentioned,
Yeah.
podcast, you mentioned helping people, write off social. So
Yeah.
just kind of wherever you
Yeah.
want to start us in the journey, kind of like how are you helping others in those areas? And then like just kind of give us a cliff note version of how God brought you to that place. Because usually it involves some of your own experience or lessons
Yeah.
like that, right?
Yeah, for sure. So, well, I have always loved writing and I have always loved teaching. And so I feel like I've been doing that. I mean, I've been literally teaching Bible studies since I was a freshman in college. So, before I was like a new Christian and my brother handed me a Bible study, excuse me, and paired me up with a girl in our little Bible study group, and he said, "Here, teach this to her." And I was like, "I don't know anything." And he said, "You know more than she does. So just teach her what you know, and if you don't know the answer, just come and ask me." And I was like, "Okay." And I never stopped. Like I just never stopped teaching. And so I started doing that early. At first I was teaching other people's Bible studies, and then it turned into me wanting to write my own Bible studies. And when my kids were really little, I had babies, and I would just invite the moms in the neighborhood to come over and like, let's study this together. And so I was doing that for years, and I was teaching a little bit at my church, and then when I adopted my youngest daughter, when I adopted my youngest daughter, uh, I had a 1 year old. We adopted her as a toddler. So I had a 1 year old, a 6 year old, and an 8 year old. And she was a 25-pound toddler who couldn't yet walk and who wouldn't let me put her down. And
Oh,
so
wow.
I could not do anything for a long time. And so I stopped doing all of my in-person teaching and I started blogging.
Mm,
And that was the way I was introduced to like writing in the online space. And that was 2008. I started my first blog, started blogging. All of those blog posts eventually became classes that I taught at church and Bible studies that I taught in my home. Then they eventually became my books,
mm.
and so I did that just consistently until I started my podcast. The podcast all came from all that too. Like all of that content was all when I was just at my dirty kitchen table, unshowered with my toddler who wouldn't let me put her down. That was basically
Wow.
what I was doing. And and so in the summer of 2022, I had released my third book by that point, and I felt stuck, and I thought I have taken this as far as I can take it. Nothing was growing, nothing was changing. I had the same people that were on my email list for 10 years, and I was like, whatever. So I just felt very uninspired, and so I hired a business coach and I said, I just want to take it to the next level. And so his plan for me involved like majorly overhauling my social media. And I was like, well, funny thing about that is like, I don't use it. And he's like, what are you talking about? And I said, well, I took a break in 2019 to write my second book, came back from that break to promote that book, decided I really hate it here. And so I just decided not to, in 2021, I just left. And so I'm not doing that anymore. So we need to find another way. And he said, well, actually, that's a really interesting thing that you talk about. Let's make you the mom who gets moms off social media. And I was like, ugh, like I do not want to be the mom who gets moms off social media because I knew why I left, but I was not really interested in trying to convince moms to leave. Moms have good reasons to stay. I had three teens,
Sure.
and you've got to be there monitoring your kids. Like, so I'm not going to tell moms to get off. And he's like, just let's try it for a year. Let's just see what happens. And I was like, ah. And so, I hired this guy. I thought I felt like God had led me to this. And so I thought, well, I'll do it. I'll just see what happens. So I created this 7-day challenge and launched this podcast tour and started going around talking to moms about getting off social media. And I was like, oh,
Okay.
and, and so as I suspected, as I was doing that podcast tour, I really didn't like talking to moms about getting off social media. But you know what I loved was the sidebar conversations I was having with these podcast hosts because we would stop hitting record and they'd be like, no, for real, how are you doing this? Because I want to leave social media and I feel like I can't. And so I started having all these conversations with writers and podcasters. And so that summer, I'm on this podcast tour. When I just flash back to 2019 when I took that first break, I was in this online writing group on Facebook and I made an announcement. I'm going to take a year off to write my book. And when I did that, all these people from this writing group messaged me and like, oh my gosh, that's so awesome. I wish I could do that. Well, one of those people was Mary Kay Tiller. We were not friends at that point. And we took that conversation from Facebook Messenger over to Voxer, and we were voxing for years about leaving social media as a writer. And I was taking her through my journey. By that time, she had left social media as well. So here we are, summer 2022. I'm on this podcast tour with this, coach that has me on this thing, Moms Getting Moms Off Social Media. And Mary Kay and I decide to go to a writers conference. It was a Christian writers conference. And every single session assumed we were on social media. It was how to grow, how to write better posts, how to get more engagement, how to do a TikTok video, it was like thing after thing after thing. And we're standing in the foyer, and I was like, where are the people talking to us? Like, where are the people that are helping female Christian writers get off social media and write outside of social media? And we looked at each other and we're like, oh, it's us. We're the people. And a few months later, we immediately started writing out the business plan for writing off social. And a couple months later, we launched our podcast. And now we've got courses and we're speaking at writers' conferences. And now we are the people. So,
Yeah, you are
anyways,
the people.
we are the people.
And I love that because you were a pattern interrupt, right? Like
Yes.
this was the pattern we had been told. I mean, I often tell the
Hmm.
story and I think about like I started in business in network marketing, and so of course this is
Right.
the way to grow your following and share your
Of
products and
course.
your business and da 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 da, da, right? At one point, I was following a coach that was having us post 8 to 12 times a day.
Yeah, that's
Eight
the kind of stuff
to
we were
12
learning at the
times.
writer. Yeah,
Yeah.
totally.
And now,
Yeah.
as a time coach, I look back and I go, oh my word, I'm so glad I did not calculate how many hours I spent either creating the post or going back to see if someone commented on the post or
Yeah,
commenting on other people's posts, hoping I would please this algorithm so that somebody would see my post and then maybe,
absolutely.
like talk about time wasted and a
Yeah,
very fruitless, what I call roadie, return on time invested, when an algorithm,
that's right.
if it's on a good day, is going to show maybe 3% of your followers what you
Yes.
really crafted. And that's if they even stop in between the cat videos and, whatever else
That's
are on
right.
there to look
That's
at. So
right. Well, and it worked
anyway,
for a hot minute. I was going to say, like, up until about 2018, social media was working really well for people like network marketers and writers.
yeah.
And for writers like me who were looking for traditional book contracts and things like that, that was the metric that publishers and agents were
Mhm.
using. What is your social media following? And thankfully it's moving away from that now very slowly. A lot of writers are still bound to it because that's what the industry is forcing upon them. But yeah, it is when you feel like it's sucking the life out of you. If it's working for you, and we tell people all the time, if it works for you, then keep doing it. But if you are feeling depressed and anxious and lonely, and you are taking the average person spends 2.5 hours a day on social media. For content creators, it's even more than that. If that's how you're spending your time and you're struggling to get your work done because all you're doing is creating the reel that's going to go away tomorrow,
Mhm.
then it's time to reassess, like, where are your priorities, how are you spending your time, and shifting away from it.
Yeah, yeah. I love
Yeah.
it because it is time we can't get back. Once it's
Right.
spent, it's gone. And
That's right.
even if it is producing some fruit, what I find is everyone is seeing the tops of our heads, right? Like
Right.
because it's like we're always looking down at this screen and not either wanting to miss out on something or not wanting to miss what somebody said on something or those kinds of things. And I feel like we're missing what really is going to matter
Yep.
in the long run, and of course in eternity. And so we are about to walk into a digital fast as the Redeem Her Time community. So what would you have to say to our listeners as someone who has, I mean, social media is not the only thing that we do on our that
Sure.
consumes us on our phone. Let's be honest. There are other things that we do on there, but it is, like you said, a big chunk of it. Um,
Yeah.
so what would you say, yeah, on the other side of it,
Yeah.
to those who are like, I don't know if I could like, not do this for the next couple of weeks, what encouragement
Yeah.
would you give them about at least why to give it a try, um,
Yeah.
and what that could do for them?
Yeah. Well, I think the first thing I would say is that whenever if you just let yourself like distance yourself from whatever platform is consuming your time, you need to give it a little bit of time because with any addiction, and it is addiction. It's not your fault you're addicted. It's meant to addict you. And we all know this now. When I left social media, we didn't know this yet. The
Yeah,
the
yeah.
the research had not yet been revealed, but now it's all out there. You can read anything to know this is meant to, it's a time suck on purpose. So it's not your fault. But with any addiction, when you first distance yourself from it, it's very painful.
Mm,
And so the first week, the first couple days especially, are going to feel miserable. And you are going to think, I cannot do this. And I would encourage you to just push past that
mm,
and and take the time to just take the time it needs to get past that uncomfortable phase. I also think that it's really important to decide ahead of time how you're going to spend your time instead. And so finding things that fill your cup, that are life-giving, that are, have eternal value, or things that are going to move your business forward, like whatever those things are, find those things ahead of time that you know. So every time you're picking up your phone and your thumb automatically goes to the Instagram icon that isn't there because you took it off your phone. Or if you're taking even a phone fast, like every time you go to reach for that phone, you already know what you're doing instead. Oh, wait, I actually brought a book for this, or I
mm,
actually brought, my notebook so that I can journal right now, or I actually decided every time I did this, I was gonna, text my mom or my
mm,
my daughter, or you know what I mean? Like I feel like being proactive about how you're going to spend your time is key to success when you're separating. I also think that different things on your phone, if you're taking like a whole digital fast, for some people it is the social media. And once they get that off their phone, then they realize they're really not looking at their phone very much. For
right.
me, even after I got the social media off, I realized like for some reason I keep picking up my phone still. And for me, it took me a while to figure it out, but it was my email.
Mm,
And so last year, finally, like after years of having email on my phone, I thought, you know what? I'm going to remove email from my phone and see what happens. And that was it. Like for me, now I don't really feel like I need to get away from my phone because everything I use my phone for now feels like a tool in a great way. Like I use it for Voxer, and that's how I keep in contact with like all the people I'm coaching, and that's how I keep in contact with my closest friends. And we're in a giant city, and so I need it for GPS, and I actually enjoy having that. I'm teaching my daughter to drive, and so all of it is like really functional and useful. And so I would encourage you to like identify those things on your phone that are actually addicting you. So if
mm.
it's games or social media or email, or I don't know what else. What else do people put on phones that's addictive? I don't even know.
Shopping stuff, I think, yeah, it's easier to
Yeah,
shop on your
right.
phone and when to shop through your
Exactly.
apps versus,
That's right. Shopping would be a great one.
yeah.
So yeah, identifying those things, I think. And finally, this is the last one I'll say, but if you're taking a break from social media and that is how you get your information, I know for a lot of moms especially, they feel like they can't leave because that's the only place where they talk about soccer practice. It's the only place the class is posting
Mm,
class news. Like
sure.
I think it's really important to appoint an ambassador. That's what I like to call them. Like you have your social media ambassador, who is a person who's going to stay on social media and who will let you know if there's anything you need to know. And and once
That's
you have
good.
those things in place, it's like, okay, I can leave. I know that if anything's going on in the classroom, Jenny's going to text me and I can. So it's like Jenny is my actual ambassador.
Oh, I love it.
And yeah,
Hey,
it's still
Jenny,
after. Yeah, that's right.
I hope you're
And
listening.
so, right. And so I think it's really important to just, you have to name those things that are freaking you out about walking away, and then you just address those things head on proactively. And
Yeah.
that's how you're going to successfully break.
Yeah, I love that. And really the purpose of a fast, and there are so many different ways to do it. It doesn't have to be like cold turkey, nothing, no screens at
Right.
all, but it is to turn down the noise and all the
Right.
distractions so that we can turn up the quiet and his
That's
voice
right.
so that we can
That's
hear him,
right.
right?
That's right. Yeah.
Because we
Fasts
live
are
in this.
not supposed to be, they're not supposed to be comfortable. So,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
But
Sorry
it
to
is
interrupt.
interesting that once
Yeah.
we, like you said, once we get past that first phase of this doesn't feel comfortable, then it actually starts
Mhm.
feeling good. Like, oh wow, like maybe I don't really want to go back to whatever that is, or in a different
That's right.
way. And
That's
that's,
exactly what happened to me. Yeah.
I love that. I love that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the reality is, we live in a really busy and distracting world. And so we have to be intentional about these things because
Right.
otherwise, there's always someone or something that is going to fill our time. And then that's going to lead to a lot of busyness in both life and business and a lot of unbalance and things like that. And I know those are topics that you speak into. So let's kind of
Yeah.
segue into that, right?
Yeah.
Usually balance, right? Like, how do you define balance? I'd be really curious
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
you're talking about it often. So define it for us. And
Yeah.
why
Yeah.
specifically do you think this is a struggle for my audience of Christian women who are running businesses? Um,
Yeah.
yeah, this elusive thing of balance.
Yeah. Well, before I define it, I always like to say what it's not because I
Perfect.
feel like half the problem that most people that I talk to who say balance is a myth, balance is impossible, balance doesn't exist, it's because they're defining it in a really horrible way. And I'm like, well, yeah, well, that balance doesn't exist. You're absolutely right. So in my book, right in the introduction, I'm just going to read it straight from there because I don't
Please
have this
do.
memorized. But
Perfect.
here we go. Balance is not doing everything. Balance is not doing everything your friends are doing. Balance is not doing everything your friends think you should be doing. Balance is not doing everything you see on Pinterest, Instagram, Facebook, or whatever social media venue is hip when you're reading this. Balance is not doing everything well. Balance is not doing everything by yourself without help. Balance is not doing a little of everything every day. I think that one trips
Mm,
most women up. Balance is not spreading yourself equally among every person, task, responsibility, and expectation. And balance is not the absence of stress.
mm,
So life is stressful, and sometimes that is just life. Like there are hard things in life. Balance is not the absence of hard.
mm,
What the way I like to define balance is that balance is knowing your priorities and then living a life in alignment with those priorities. Like it's super simple. In my book, I actually go into a little more detail and talk about right attitudes and right thinking because, we can be doing all that. We can know exactly what we're supposed to be doing and we can be doing those things. But if our attitude stinks, that's really not balanced. So I'm just assuming, like, very generally speaking, that everybody here has a good attitude. And
most
so
days, most days.
most days. So yeah, it really comes down to knowing what you're supposed to be doing right now in this season of life. And
Mm,
that changes.
yes.
It like what my priorities were when I was a mom in the 2008 with a newly adopted toddler and where I am right now with that toddler who's now 18 and about to graduate from high school. Like it's a totally different, like my priorities are not the same. And so, the reason it's a problem for business owners is because, like I said, for one, we have, some faulty definition of balance. So we're just thinking about balance in a way that is not realistic. We're
Mm,
picturing ourselves like having to balance everything perfectly in order to actually achieve balance when really balance can look really, really unbalanced. You can put everything aside except this one thing for a season, which
yeah.
we can talk more about that. And you can be very, very balanced. And it might look like from the outside world, like, but you're not taking care of this, this, and this, and that. And you can be like, yes. And if I did, that would be unbalanced for me because that's not my priority right now. So I think like the newborn stage, I think in terms of motherhood, like the newborn stage, when all you're doing is like taking care of that newborn and people are bringing you meals and you are going days at a time without a full night's sleep, months sometimes.
Yes.
Like that season is bonkers. And yet, for you to try to like have a date night and get a workout in and go to yoga and, make sure you are doing it. nightly skincare routine and like, whatever, all the things that we try to fit in there to be balanced, that would be really foolish,
Mm,
to try to be squeezing all of that in during a season when your priority is to take care of the newborn and to get as much sleep as possible. Like those are your priorities right
yeah.
now.
Keep the humans alive and keep yourself going too. Right.
Yes, exactly. And just get through that season, in a coherent way as much as you can. But I also think that sometimes it's a problem for business owners because we don't really know what our priorities are.
Mm,
It's very confusing to look around and you're looking at all these other people and what all these other business owners are doing and you're thinking, "Oh, should I be doing that? Should I be doing that? Should I be doing?" And it gets very confusing. So sometimes we don't know what those are. Sometimes we know what our priorities are, but we don't really know how to put it into place. Like, how do we live this out? I know I'm supposed to be growing, this portion of my business right now, but what does that look like on Wednesday morning? Like what should I be doing Wednesday morning to achieve this priority? And so we don't always know how to put it into place. Um, and finally, I think that it is a problem for us because sometimes we put too much emphasis, and you kind of alluded to this when we first started the conversation, that balance isn't just what we do. It's not just things on the calendar. A lot of balance is mental. It's what we think about what we do, and
yeah.
that's where
Yeah.
like kind of the right attitudes and right thinking come. And this is like the best example I can think of this, but and this messes with me personally in my business, and that's why I'm going to use myself as an example. So if I have 6 things on my to-do list today, like I'll get up in the morning, I'll have my to-do list, and I get 4 of those things done. That messes with me.
Mm,
And I will, at the end of the day, I'll be like, I am behind. I did not get done what I intended to get done. Now I have to push that to tomorrow, and that's going to eat into tomorrow. And like I have to go through this mental gymnastics thing of like, it's okay, it's okay. Now, if I would have written 2 or 3 things on my to-do list and I got those exact same 4 things done, I would be like, I am amazing. I'm such a rock star. Look at me crushing my goals and going even further. Nothing changed except what I thought about those say. I got the
mm,
exact same 4 things done, but my thinking was wrong in the first one and probably not really right in the second one either.
sure.
But
But
how I approach, like what I think about what I'm doing is just as important as what I'm actually doing to live it out. So, so yeah, I mean, we could unpack any or all of those things, or we
yeah,
could just keep
I
talking.
I love that. And I had this
Yeah.
conversation with one of my CEOs the other day she said that she was spending a lot of time trying to catch up. I'm like,
Mm,
why do you feel like you need to catch up? Like,
right.
did someone tell you you're behind?
Right.
Guess who told her
Exactly.
she was behind? It was
She
the
did.
voice in her head, right? And
That's right.
I'm like, you're an entrepreneur. So you don't have a boss. If it's one thing if you have a boss who's like, I need this by,
Of
Thursday
course.
and it's not in, then yes, okay, I'm trying
Then
to
you're behind.
and
That's
I'm
right.
behind, right?
Right.
But for most of us, especially entrepreneurs, yeah,
Yeah,
who says you're behind?
that's right.
And yet I feel like we run around always saying, I'm behind the clock, I'm behind my to-do list, I'm behind
Yep.
something. I'm always trying to catch up because, like I think you said, like we're looking either we're putting so much on our plate that it's not possible to do all of that, or we're just
That's right.
measuring our worth on that versus celebrating, yeah, I got one thing
Yeah.
done today, or
Yeah.
whatever it was. Yeah, I love that. Um, I,
Yeah.
I I love all of these things, and I'm thinking like the world tells us to be balanced.
Yeah.
So like what do you hear the world saying to people
Yeah.
around balance and even if it's the wrong definition because they're probably using the wrong definition of it as they're talking to them about it. But like what kind of advice do you
Yeah.
hear the world say? Let's start there.
Yeah. Well, I think when I read or hear people talk about balance in the world, they're usually talking about the kind of balance that's kind of like scales, like,
Mm,
you're
yeah,
going to have to like equally divide, it's this equilibrium thing, or it's like
yeah.
balance beam. And if it's like this balancing act. I'm
That's
standing
like a
on one
teeter
foot because you
totter.
can't
Like
see
I
right
have
now. Yes,
to,
I have to get it all perfect or it's going to be off. And I really think that that's just it's a really destructive way for us to constantly be putting that on ourselves.
Mm,
Now, I do think there's an element of, whenever you say yes to something, you're actually saying no to something else. So I do
yeah.
think there's an element of that. We can talk about that. But I
That's not
don't
say
think it's
balance.
always, yeah, it's not necessarily balanced. That's just like real life. Like that's just really what it's like.
Consequences of
So
choices. Yeah.
exactly. So, what I hear more from the world is that you have to do everything.
Mm,
Like that's the definition. And I don't know that I would even call that balance as much as I would call it that's how the world and I would venture to say it's not even always in the world because
I know.
like I don't listen to a lot of worldly like podcasts and follow a lot of worldly people, but the the things that I listen to sometimes tell me even in the Christian
Mm,
realm that I have to be all the places doing all the things and going at it like with all my heart all the time. And I just think that is just a recipe for exhaustion and
yeah.
burnout.
Burnout.
And yeah, and I don't think that that's the way Jesus walked this earth. I don't think that is the example he set us, in when he created the earth and here we are creating, our little things that we're creating and that he's called us to do. And, he rested and he stopped and he looked at them and he said they were good. And then he created the next thing and he let things grow and take root. And, he's not like frenetically creating constantly, and that's not how Jesus is or was. And so, yeah, it's a big contrast. It's a big paradigm shift. I'm very anti-hustle.
I love it.
I'm very, yeah,
So was Jesus, right? Like,
yeah,
I mean, I'm
yeah,
thinking Matthew 28, yes, yeah, or 11, 28 through 30, I think is where it is. That's where my mind's going, right? Where he's like, come to me. And I love the way the
yeah,
message says it. All of you who are stressed out, worn out, and burned out, I'm
yes,
going to give you rest for your soul. Like, learn from me,
yes,
work with me, walk with me, and I'm going to teach you how to carry this thing called life,
yes,
right, in a whole different way than
yeah,
the weights that were being put on their shoulders by the Pharisees and all the extra laws and the doing and the,
that's right.
roles and responsibilities. So let's talk about that. Because
Yeah,
we had this conversation before we hit record. I love saying, what does Jesus say, right? What does the Lord have to
yeah,
say to us
yeah,
when it's about our busyness or about our balance or about,
yeah,
these things that we do struggle with on a regular basis because we are
yeah,
sinful. We do live in a fallen world.
yeah,
And there is a lot of this just around us, even if we are
yeah,
trying to protect ourselves. So what is the opposite message? What is the countercultural way to approach balance and busy and even
yeah.
social media stuff and things like that?
Sure. Well, the place where I always start and the place where I lead the people that I lead is in Matthew 22 and Mark 12. It's told in both of those, but it's where the teacher of the law came to Jesus and said, which law is the greatest, which is the most important, and I always think I used to always think to myself, if Jesus would just tell me what to do, I would just do that. Because like it just felt like everything felt equally important to me, Like I would look at all the stuff I have to do and I didn't know always how to discern what is the most important thing to do. And so when I look at that scripture, I think, you just alluded to all the laws. There were 613 laws at the time, and a lot of Jews at the time believed that they were all equal in significance. And
Mhm.
so this teacher of the law, who was not asking with a pure heart, he was trying to trip Jesus up. But I love Jesus's answer nonetheless, because it gives us such a directive for life and for the basis of balance. Is he said, love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. And then he said, on these two things hang all the law and the prophets. And so, in everyday language, that is love God with everything in you, first and foremost, love the people he has put in your life, secondly, as you love yourself. So it implies love for
Mhm.
yourself.
Yeah.
You're taking care of
Mhm.
yourself. You're not burning yourself into the ground. You're not sacrificing your own health at the altar of others. It's assuming you're taking care of yourself. And when you get those two things right, everything falls into place. And so the real question then becomes, what does it look like right now for me to love God and love people? Like, what does that look like right now? And it really depends. Again, like, I can't get inside everybody's business and everybody's family, but I really think that it requires you to get as close as possible to Jesus and ask him. And that's where the quiet comes in. That's where shutting down the noise,
Mm.
because you're not going to get the answer to this on a podcast. Even this podcast, as awesome as it is, or my podcast, as awesome as it is, you're not going to get that answer in a book unless it's scripture. And the Holy Spirit is going to tell you
Mm.
what you need to be focusing on. And so what does love of loving God and loving people look like to you right now? So if you're a mom with kids still in the home, it's going to look different than an empty nester. If you are caring for your aging parents or you have a scary health diagnosis, it's going to look different than if you're super healthy, but you're also trying to get out of debt. So like in that scenario, you have all this energy and you have the health to spend on your business, and you need to be prioritizing your business and you need to be generating income to get out of debt. Like it's going to look totally different than if you're married and you have someone sharing the load with you, the financial load, or if that marriage is horribly in trouble. Like loving God and loving people might look like marriage counseling and date night and booking a trip and saving up for that, just the two of you. Like it really requires you to get alone and get quiet with God, turn off all the other voices, get off social media, be the mom who gets moms off social media. I had to throw that in there. I don't want to be that mom. But no, if take your digital detox, get
Mm.
alone with the Lord,
Mm.
ask him, Lord, what does loving you and loving the
Mm.
people in my life that you've placed in my life, what does that look like right now? And what does it look like for my personal life and for my business? Because you can't really separate. I think that's another thing that the world tries to separate when they talk about balance is they talk about like work-life balance. I'm like, no, like it's all life.
Right.
All of it's life.
Yeah.
So it's all integrated. Your time with the Lord and the loving the people in your marriage, your kids, your business, like it's all life. And so you can't like separate, well, this is what I'm doing it for work, but this is what I'm doing in life. Like, no, it's all life. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Just like faith weaves into all of those parts as well.
Exactly.
And the life
Yes.
wheel that I've created for the planner actually puts faith at the center. It makes faith the
Mm,
hub instead of being one equal portion of the pie
right.
that I see in so many. Because I'm like, no, this is where everything is the core, the hub that everything lays the
Yes.
foundation on. And then when I have women go through the Redeem Her Time balance assessment, we look at how one area, because there are seven other areas we talk about, how one area does impact the other. Because when this area is
Absolutely.
lacking or hurting or being neglected, even though
Right.
this area over on the other side may be really strong and feels like it's thriving, this is going to
Hmm.
put some weight on that and stress on that. And eventually this is going to start falling too. And
That's
so,
so good.
yeah, how do we pay attention and like you said, be in alignment? It's like I equate it to like a bicycle tire, right? Like if you have a bike
Yes.
tire, but there are certain spokes that aren't all the way connected,
Right.
your wheel will roll down the road. You can go
Yep.
for a bike ride. It's going to be a little bumpy. And every
Hmm.
time you hit that spot, it's going to clunk, clunk, but it's going to put that pressure on the other areas. And eventually it's probably going to break some other ones. And so, like
That's
you
a
said,
great
it's
analogy.
checking in with our alignment. My son was a triathlete, a professional triathlete. And so, like,
Yes.
I mean, you check your tires before you get on a road race
Yes.
because you want to make
Yes.
sure everything is in alignment and
That's right.
all equally, holding the weight,
That's
of
right.
each other. And yeah, so I love
Yes. My husband well, I don't know if he still is, but he's done professional triathlons as well. Did your son do
Hey,
Ironman competitions?
he
Has he done
actually is
that?
about to do his first one coming up. So
Oh,
he had
good
done
for
more of the
him.
sprint when he had his professional license and things. So now he's, yeah,
Oh, that's awesome.
like,
Yeah, my husband has done multiple Ironmen. I don't know how to pluralize that word.
right?
Ironmans.
Whatever that is. It's
Ironman
okay. We're not an
competitions.
English lesson. We'll take
That's
that.
that,
So
that's
yeah.
right. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
awesome. Yes, great analogy. Great
But what I love
analogy. I
that you're
love it.
telling us is that all of this process takes time
Yeah.
to do what feels unproductive.
Yeah.
Because I remember back in the day, I mean, my husband is law enforcement, so doesn't work a regular schedule. He also was military, so he would deploy for up to a year at a time. I
Oh my
homeschooled and
gosh.
ran women's ministry and ran a business and took care of the house. And, like I really didn't have any quiet ever for a lot
Right.
of years and just kept pushing through in typical Lissa fashion because that's what you do to stay balanced and keep things upright. And until I
Yes.
crashed, finally got a diagnosis of what was going on in my throat. And
Mm,
God was like, "Are you ready to listen?"
yeah.
And so I love your reminder that, like, even though sometimes it feels like my list is a mile long and I should be doing something, maybe
Hmm.
the most important thing you're going to do right now is stop and just be quiet
Yeah.
and not do anything and just
That's
sit with him and
that's
ask
right.
him, like you said, what does this look like? And where do I need to focus some time and attention?
That's
Because
right.
otherwise, I say if you don't give it intentional time and attention where it's needed, it will one day demand it.
Oh, that's so
Always
good.
cost more. It's like
Yep.
paying up front with cash or paying later with credit.
It's so
It,
true.
it is always going to
You're
cost.
just so full of good analogies today. I love
Well, it's
it. I
because I've had to learn this lesson the really hard way,
yes.
walking it
Yes.
out, and so I love this, right?
Yeah.
So how does taking the time to do this, right? Take
Yeah.
it, whether that's getting off social, whether that's, putting down our phone, whether that's not jumping to the to-do list as soon as we get up, whatever that is, how
Right.
does like taking this time to get close to Jesus, to get quiet, to ask him, what does this look like in my season of life, to listen,
Hmm.
and then to obediently walk with him in that? How does that affect our time? And then
Yeah.
how does it affect what we call around here our RODI, our return on time invested, like the fruit of that?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you know, our goal in all of this is balance or peace.
Mm,
And, you know, you can either be doing all of these things in life and lack peace and be miserable. And, that's going to take its toll. Like you just said, I mean, you just said all the things like with the spoke, and it's going to take its toll on your children if you're ignoring them because you're sacrificing them on the altar of productivity, or it will take its toll on your mental health, on your physical health. I mean, there's so many ways that this just impacts your entire being.
mm,
So, the goal is to just live the life. Like, I mean, honestly, if I even boil it down even more granular than what I just said, from the scripture that I shared, is just whatever the Lord tells you to do, just do that. If
mm,
you just obey, if you just walk with him and obey whatever he says.
mm,
One of my favorite scriptures is when, and I don't know exactly where it is. I want to say it's in Luke, but I'm not positive. But it's when Jesus was performing his first miracle, and he was turning the water into wine, and his mother came to him, and she said they're out of wine, and he was like, "What does this have to do with me?" And she
mm.
like totally did not respond to that, and she looked at the person who's in charge of the wine and said, "Just do whatever he says." And
Yeah.
I love that. I love that his mom said, just do whatever he says. And
Mm,
when it comes down to it, that's really all you have to do. And I know it's like, that's all I have to do. How do I know what he says? And that's where all the sitting down and getting quiet and spending time with him and seeking him in his word and seeking wise counsel and listening to things like this, where
mhm,
people who have walked this road and who have done the work of like seeking out the Lord can counsel you, and finding people in your community that you can go and talk to and say, I'm thinking about this, does that sound like it's good to you? I mean, it's like there's a lot of there's a lot of it requires relationship. You know what I mean?
yes.
It's not just about getting alone and quiet, though that's a huge thing. It's relationship with the Lord, but it requires staying connected to people who know the Lord and can speak into your life and who
Mm,
have some life experience. And I just think it's, this is kind of off on a tangent, but I just feel like one of the yet another reason to take a digital fast
mhm,
is that being digitally connected has really
mm,
caused us to suffer in real life relationships, and we feel like we're connecting because we're hitting a heart on someone's post, but we're really just not connecting. Like we're really not having good conversations with women who can like speak wisdom into us, and we can run something past them and they can go, that doesn't sound right. Like
Mm.
that feels like it's not good. Like, can I pray with you? That we need to be doing that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I didn't plan on going off on that tangent, but maybe someone needs to hear that.
Maybe someone
So
needs to hear it. And you know what? It's
yeah,
all connected, right? Like,
right, right.
we need to be hearing, directly through his word, through his spirit, but also through, like you said, the people that he has put in our life who are
Yes,
also seeking his word and his spirit. And
yes.
I think he knows we need that community. We need that fellowship. We're not created to live on an island by
No.
ourselves.
No, we're part of
Um,
a body. Like,
we
I mean,
are. Yeah.
there's a lot of scripture that alludes to that. Like unity in the body it was Jesus's prayer in John 17. Like that's what he prayed for us,
Yeah.
was that I just pray that they would be one as I am one with the Father. He wants us to be part of something like that.
Mm,
I can't say to the mouth or, I don't need you. Like you can't just sit in your little isolation and say, you know what, it's just me and Jesus, and that's all I need. Like you do need Jesus. Yes, please get along with Jesus.
mm,
And if you're getting along with Jesus, he's going to tell you to go be part of a body
mm,
and go because they need you and you need them. Like they need your gifts too. And
mm,
so your gifts aren't just for you. They're for the body, and other people have gifts that you need.
mm,
So it is really important to break away from, I have an online business too. I have two podcasts and I'm like, dude, I spend a lot of time in my office and
mm.
I get it. But I have to force myself because I'm also an introvert and it's not comfortable for me. I would much rather I could stay in my office all day and I would be so happy.
Right?
I would just be so happy. And I could do this, this still feels like, I'm talking to you, but it's still like I don't have to go drive to you. I don't
Mhm.
have to take 2 hours. We can get this done in 45 minutes. And you know what I mean? And I really think there really must be someone who needs to hear this because this is not any place I planned on going in this interview at all. So yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I love it. And God's word does not return void. And so we're going to pray
Right.
that the truths that have been shared today,
Yes.
that you are here, that you as listeners are hearing, and that you are really digging into what is God speaking to me, and what do I need to do with what I've heard today? What was the nugget that was for me? And so I'm going to encourage you
Exactly.
guys to think about that and to take that to Him and to share this episode with some friends, some business besties, others who also are like, I just need to be more balanced, or I need to not be so busy, or I need to be better at managing
Yeah.
my time, or, whatever. Like it really does
Yeah.
come down to not just what we do, but thinking about what we do. And that's what I say around time. Like most people don't take the time to do the work of thinking about their time. They
That's
just
right.
keep spending it and not really thinking about what kind of result it's producing, or really paying a whole lot of attention. So we could talk all day,
Yes.
apparently, and we've only scratched
Yes.
the surface. Now you've mentioned some books, you've mentioned some other resources. So here's where I'm like, tell us where to go. Like, if we're
Okay.
like, oh, I need some Sandy in my life, like, I know we're not going to go find you on social.
That is
So,
so
how do we
true.
like get some more Sandy and yeah, and kind of get into your world and things like that?
Sure. So the best place is just to go to my website. It's the scooponbalance.com. Everything that I do is there. So links to writing off social, links to my podcast, links to all my books, like everything is there. But I also have a quiz for your listeners,
Yay.
and it's a personality assessment that will tell you the kind of busy person you are. Because
Mm,
one of the things that I have learned about busyness is that busyness is usually a byproduct of something else. Okay. We're usually just not busy for busyness sake. It's usually because we are either mismanaging our time or we're saying yes to things we shouldn't be saying yes to, or we're super unclear about what we should be saying yes to. So we're just doing everything and like throwing spaghetti at the wall and hoping that it sticks. And so this quiz will ask you a few questions to help you really get to the root of why you are overly busy, or if you are the all coveted, well balanced woman. You might get that result as well. And so I would love for you to do that. If you do that, then you'll be on my emailing list. And then you will also be signed up for my newsletter, Behind the Balance, which is where you can get more Sandy. So, yeah.
yay, yay. Yeah, I remember taking your quiz when I was sitting waiting for my hairdresser. I'll have to go back. I did
Awesome.
save the results, and so I'm trying to remember now because I think it was like a year ago. I need to go back
Oh,
and see
wow.
what it was that I was. So I think it's
Yes.
probably grown since then too. So maybe I need to take it again. Maybe I'll see what it was and then I'll take it again. I love
Yes.
this.
Yes, I love it too. So
Yeah,
thank you.
yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll make sure that we link to your website so everybody can find all the good stuff and take the quiz and all of that.
Thanks.
And I always give an open invitation to my guests to come join us inside the Redeem Her Time community. This is my version of being social. It's not on social
Yes.
media. I do it on a different platform where it's not noisy. It's not going to suck you into a black hole.
Nice.
We're just in there to be real and to like take the things we hear in the podcast and actually do something with them. And so I think it's going to be a
Yeah.
really fun place for us to be like, I was this and I was this after taking the quiz. So you guys take the quiz and then come over inside the community and I'll make a poll and you can like say, yep, this is who I was and find some
Oh,
people
fun.
that, yeah, you can resonate with and hold each other accountable or, kind of brainstorm like, how do we, knowing this, what do we do and things like that. That'll be really fun, I think, to
Oh,
implement and things like that. So, Sandy, thank you so
awesome.
much for saying yes,
Yeah.
for giving us your time today, for blessing us with what God has put in you. I know it's going to bless a
Yeah.
lot of women as this episode lives out there and doesn't go
Yeah.
away in 24 hours like social,
That's right.
which is
That's
why I don't
right.
depend on social either for my business.
That's right.
But I always love to end with this question as we're finishing things up. And it's so
Yeah.
perfectly, I'm actually going to reword what I had sent you ahead of time. So I hope you don't mind. But based on what
Yeah.
you told us today, right? And this really, I teach women to ask the question, what is it time for?
Yeah.
Because that slows us down to the present time in front of us and the purpose behind it. So
Right.
when you look at this season of your life, I'm not going to
Yeah.
separate between the two, just of life, right?
Right.
What is it time for in this season for you, Sandy?
Yeah. As I was thinking through the answer to this, I thought like you, I can't separate because it's saying yes to some really big things and saying no to simultaneously saying no and shifting. So because my daughter, my youngest, is a senior this year, I am I am feeling very compelled to just lean into that relationship. This is an end of an era for me this year. Next year, if you were to ask me the same question in 9 months, it's going to be vastly different because, I've been doing this school schedule mom thing for 25 years.
Yeah,
And so this is coming to an end and I'm leaning hard into her and and my business, I'm feeling God um, have me spend a little less time on the Balanced Momcast, which I've been doing faithfully for 6 years, and really leaning into writing off social because that is a very timely, like the time is now for that.
yeah,
And so I can feel God just pulling me to yes to the relationships with my kids who are growing so fast, and yes to writing off social, and a little bit less yes. I'm not going to say I'm saying no, but I'm greatly reducing the time that I'm spending in that part of my business.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
We do that
that's
with God because that's what He's told us to do. We know it's always
that's right.
going to have an abundant ROTI, right? It will
That's
have a
right.
return on that time invested or not invested in some of those.
Yes.
So thanks so much for sharing with us. We
Yes.
pray for you as you do that and excited to see what God does.
Thank you, Lisa. This has been such a great conversation, and I've just had so much fun talking to you. And God bless you and everything that you're doing here. It's really great work.
Thank you.